A miner discovered a bubbling hole in the snowy ground. Inside the hole, a white sticky substance mixed with the snow. Curious, the miner couldn't resist tasting it. He found the strange material sweet and addictive. Realizing its commercial potential, they began extracting the goo and packaging it as a new dessert product called the stuff. Marketed in containers like ice cream or yogurt and advertised as zero-calorie yet delicious, the stuff quickly swept across the nation in popularity. But the booming sales of the stuff made other ice cream companies extremely jealous. So they hired a professional investigator named David, hoping to uncover its secret formula. David, once an FBI agent, had a notorious reputation as an industrial spy. Although he accepted the hefty paycheck and took on the mission, in truth, David was full of integrity. He had long suspected the company behind the stuff, so he immediately sent samples to a laboratory. From the scientists, he learned that the stuff was sterile and free of contamination, yet it moved when stimulated. That was clearly not a property food should have. David also disguised himself as a wealthy businessman eager to buy distribution rights. This trick earned him the attention of Nicole, the head of marketing. Meanwhile, a young boy named Jason stumbled upon the horrifying secret of the stuff. One night, when he got up for a midnight snack, Jason opened the refrigerator and saw a carton of the stuff tipped over. To his horror, the white dessert was crawling out of its container on its own. This terrifying sight made Jason realize the stuff was alive and he rushed to tell his family, but nobody believed him. Determined to stop others from eating the monstrous dessert, Jason caused chaos in a supermarket. He smashed shelves and destroyed packages of the stuff. But his actions drew the attention of the store staff, and Jason was soon caught. At the same time, David tracked down former FDA official Mr. Vickers, one of the men who had signed off on the stuff's approval. Vickers couldn't name its exact ingredients, and most of the officials who had approved it were either abroad or missing. David also noticed that Vickers seemed obsessed with the stuff. He even fed it to his dog, Ben, though he was strangely afraid of Ben. That night, after David left, Vickers was attacked by Ben. The dog, now vicious and uncontrollable, knocked him to the ground and mauled him as his screams echoed through the house. With the documents Vickers provided, David traced the stuff back to the small town where it was first discovered. But the residents there behaved oddly. At a gas station, David met Charlie, a former head of a famous cookie franchise and once a mogul in the junk food business. Charlie's company had been stolen from him when his own relatives sold it to the conglomerate behind the stuff. Stripped of his fortune and furious, Charlie also wanted to uncover the town's secret. The two went to a nearby post office to ask questions, but the strange behavior of the worker made them wary. David noticed the place was littered with empty containers of the stuff even though it was crowded. Suddenly, the worker, whose body made strange noises, rushed out. Moments later, they heard a loud thud. When they checked, they found the stuff oozing out of the man's mouth, moving as if alive, crawling toward the outside. David and Charlie quickly chased after it, but they were confronted by eerie townsfolk. When the two fought them off, they discovered that their bodies were filled with the stuff. After this ordeal, David and Charlie finally saw the horrifying truth with their own eyes. The stuff was not food at all. It was a living parasitic organism. Anyone who ate it was gradually taken over, mind and body controlled until they became zombie-like hosts, eventually devoured from the inside out. Later, David tracked down a distributor named Fletcher. Fletcher admitted he never ate the stuff and didn't know its true ingredients. He only wanted to profit from people's obsession with it. David discovered Fletcher owned only a single quarry, which made him suspicious. Sensing David's real intentions, Fletcher tried to bribe him, begging him to stop investigating. Smooth and calculating, David took the bribe without hesitation. But he never stopped his work. Thanks to David's persistence, Nicole, who once marketed the stuff, eventually joined his side. Then the lab worker brought David a newspaper. It reported the news about young Jason's supermarket rampage. David immediately realized Jason might be in danger. He decided to find the boy at once. Meanwhile, Jason discovered that his family had already been taken over by the stuff. They had thrown out all regular food and the house was piled high with cartons of the white dessert. Unable to escape, Jason accepted a cup of the stuff from his brother. But secretly, he poured it into the toilet. In water, the goo began writhing violently. Jason quickly flushed it away. To fool his family, he filled another cup with shaving cream, but his trick was soon exposed. Jason had no choice but to run out of the house. Luckily, David arrived just in time. He picked up Jason and quickly drove him away to safety. Soon after, David and Nicole brought Jason to the production base of the stuff. Using Nicole's status as the head of marketing, they gained a warm reception from the public relations director. They left the sleeping Jason on the plane, then sneaked into the factory, pretending to be shooting an advertisement. David and Nicole tried to learn the formula of the stuff, but the workers guarded the secret closely and quickly escorted them out. Meanwhile, locals controlled by the stuff attacked the pilot. Jason, realizing the danger, managed to escape the plane. He secretly hid inside a tanker truck carrying the stuff, but the vehicle was locked and he became trapped inside. That night, David and Nicole stayed at a motel. They didn't realize the entire place was already infested with the stuff. As David slept, the creature attacked him. Fortunately, Nicole poured alcohol on his face and set it on fire. The burning stuff shrieked in pain and finally retreated. Soon after, they witnessed a man being completely consumed by the stuff. Terrified, they fled the motel while the fiery creature let out piercing screams behind them. Determined to uncover the truth, they secretly returned to the factory. Following a tanker, they entered the quarry. There they finally saw the horrifying reality. The white goo bubbling up straight from the ground. Disguised in stolen work clothes, David planted explosives on a nearby mountain wall. He blended into the crowd, but the worker who had hosted him earlier recognized him. David easily overpowered the man and heard Jason's muffled voice coming from inside a tanker. He quickly drove the truck out of the quarry. Moments later, the explosives detonated, burying the source of the stuff. At the roadside, Nicole was suddenly attacked by miners under its control. David arrived just in time and saved her. He also freed Jason from the tanker, but the police soon discovered them. They pretended to cooperate, then knocked out the officer, who was clearly addicted to the stuff. Fearing that the entire local police force had been compromised, David drove to a secret military base nearby. At first, Colonel Spears refused to believe his story, but David's persistence convinced him, and soon the colonel led his soldiers into the factory. After eliminating the controlled workers, they entered the facility. To their shock, the goo had already abandoned the hosts, leaving behind empty husks of human shells. At the same time, Nicole and Jason were attacked by the stuff. Fortunately, they managed to escape unharmed. To warn the public, David and his allies brought evidence to a nearby radio station. As they prepared to broadcast, Charlie suddenly appeared. David thought he came to help, but to his surprise, Charlie had already been taken over by the stuff. In an instant, the broadcast room was filled with the white mass. David caused a short circuit and set the creature ablaze. The fire destroyed the stuff and Nicole and Jason narrowly escaped. Soon after, an emotional Colonel Spears made a serious announcement on live radio. For the first time, the nation learned that the dessert was actually an alien parasite. After the broadcast, the American people rose up. They burned cartons of the stuff in the streets and blew up its shops and factories. With government intervention, the crisis was quickly brought under control. But when David confronted the distributor Fletcher, he discovered a darker scheme. Fletcher had secretly partnered with ice cream companies to create a new product made with 20% the stuff. Enraged, David pulled out his gun. He had Jason carry in a crate full of the stuff. At gunpoint, David forced the greedy businessmen, who had never eaten it themselves, to taste the terrifying dessert. Within moments, they were hooked. Satisfied, David and Jason left the room, leaving the corrupt men to their fate. But the danger wasn't over. Smugglers continued trafficking the stuff in secret. And once again, humanity's fate hung by a thread.